Maya Angelou says in a book, I wouldn't take nothing for the journey. And I often add the words, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what I share for you about my journey here will include the good, the bad, and the ugly. It started for me in a small town called Carroll, Illinois. Carroll, Illinois is where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers join together. As my great-grandmother would often say, we have the best of the North and surely the worst of the South. So I grew up as a black gay boy in this town, oftentimes being called nigger, faggot, sissy, made to feel really disrespected and dishonored. In the midst of that, I tried to figure out how could I be free. And the best way for freedom for me was to hide myself. So I tried to fit in as the perfect nondescript black person. I certainly did. I tried to identify as being gay. I was young. I was lost in many ways. So I threw myself into the Roman Catholic Church. And I was lucky I had a gay-friendly priest, so it never came up as a subject. But I figured if I could do that, I could keep hiding. I wouldn't be free, but at least I would hide so much of me that no one would pick on me. That turned out not to be true. I was called those names by family members, friends, church members. And I thought, oh my God, this is not the life I want to live. So as I grew up, I decided I wanted to be a Catholic priest. Great answer. Great way to be in the closet. But then they told me that I was too immature for the first year of college, so I had to go to this secular school, which was like a horrible idea. But I get to Southern University in Carbondale, and I'm finally around gay people, and I'm so excited. But then I was called the N-word. I was called the F-word. I was told that my nose is too big, that we don't do chocolate, and my skin, and all this racism that I experienced in classism in the gay community. I was like, wow, why in the hell would I want to come out of the closet to hang out with these people? So I decided hiding was better. And finally, they're like, you can come to seminary. I was like, okay, this is it. I've got it made. I get to seminary, I immerse myself into theology and philosophy, becoming a liturgist, and loved all of that, and just sort of threw away the sexuality thing until we had the pink day, when the rector of our seminary called all the seminarians in to say that it was inappropriate to wear pastel-colored shirts if you're studying to be a priest. It's not masculine. I'm like, wow. So I went to the chapel, and we had a big icon of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And I figured if anyone could deliver me of homosexuality, she could. So I prayed for 2.5 hours, laying prostrate on the floor. And when I got up, I was gayer than I got down when I got down. But I still was not ready to come out. There was a lot of protection in hiding behind this image of being a priest or seminarian. And then one Tuesday night, we have a community gathering where we go to Mass, and you go to Mass so much, the scriptures, I'm honest to say, you listen again and again, and then you're like, okay, it's the same thing. But this night, the priest was quoting the Gospel of Matthew, and he said, Jesus says you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And I went, And my friend Michael was like, what's wrong? I was like, nothing. And as he continued on reading the gospel and getting his sermon, I went, And my friend Joe was like, do we need to go outside and talk? Like, I will tell you after Mass. I walked out of that chapel that moment knowing that I could not hide anymore. But I realized that I couldn't completely come out because I had a family to deal with. So I went to the rector of the seminary, the dean. Well, rector is an interesting word for them because they were often something really mean. And he said, well, you know, it is incompatible with the church's teaching to be a practicing homosexual, whether you are a priest or a lay person. The only option you have is celibacy, chastity, confession, and communion. I was like, wow. That's sort of not in my plan. I was planning on being a practicing homosexual unrepentant. So he says to me, you can stay at the end of the semester, but you are set free of this place. And I thought I had found freedom, And I did just a little bit. I immersed myself into retail. I decided I was going to become this great retail executive. I worked for Saks Fifth Avenue and Ralph Lauren. But I kept finding myself not happy, so I ended up in nonprofit work. And the first job I had was Lambda Justice Center in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And it paid nothing. And my dad said to me, you are going to be poor the rest of your life, and you'll be living with roaches and rats. You can't do this. But I pursued on. And there came a point where I realized I needed to do something different. And the universe works together for you, because my brother called a family meeting to tell them that our brother has not been home in 4 years. And I know it's because he's gay and he thinks we won't accept him. So any of you who can't accept him, be quiet, but I want my brother at home and in our life. I came home that summer. It was interesting because it was don't ask, don't tell. They knew, we just didn't talk about it. It was a little bit more freedom. And then I met this beautiful Irish man, gay 90s on a dance floor on Sunday night from Seattle. I packed my bags a month and a half and rode a Greyhound bus to here. It is not an experience of America I would recommend to anyone, but I made it here. And when I got here, I began to get involved with Lambert House and march in the Gay Pride Parade. And I felt freer, but I was still hiding, because I wanted to be a minister. And I found the independent Catholic movement that accepted gay people in all walks of life. And so that was a happening, that was a movement. But I was still not free. So my great-grandmother died in 1997 at 101. And my dad asked if I was wanting to give some words at her eulogy. And I did. I sung a song that she taught us as a kid. And then as I walked off the pulpit in this Baptist church, my father came up, put his arm around me, and walked me down to my chair and said, well done. That's the first affirmation I ever had from my father in my 35 years of living. It felt free. And then 3 days later, my best friend called me and said, this lady said, your dad is ashamed of you. He was embarrassed that you were up there. So I called my sister Monica and said, I hear these things. She says, baby, I don't believe that. Let's call Dad. I was like, no, I'll see him in a couple weeks, and I'll talk to him then. And he called me for 15 minutes and said, I want you to know I know who you are. I don't understand it all, but you're my child, and I love you. And nobody talks about my children and get away with it. So he got in his blue Mercedes and drove 300 miles to his hometown, knocked on the door and said, I want you to understand a few things. My son has not thought about you since he left this town 20 years ago. And you should not think about him. But if you are confused about how I feel about my child, I want you to know that I love my child, I'm not ashamed of him, and you ought to do the same for yours. That was freeing. But I still was not free, because I had never brought a partner home to my family. So I prepared my sister, who's always there for me. I'm bringing Doug home. She's like, ooh. We open. And here's what I get about straight people. I won't be judgmental, but in my family, they're cool with you being gay when you can talk about fashion and what your house looks like and how you should organize it. But when they think about you have a partner, there are things you must be doing with that person, and how are the nieces and nephews going to handle that, and will they see you do anything inappropriate? They get crazy. So I bring my Irish, red-headed, blue-eyed to the heart of Kansas City, Missouri. And the first 3 days, my dad didn't show up. We had a family dinner. My little nephew, Jamal, looked around and just turned around and said, well, you didn't say he was white. And that was his only concern at that time. But my dad didn't show up. And I respect my dad. And my dad has had some indiscretions in his life, so I felt like he couldn't judge me. And my brother said, I don't know why he's not coming around, but don't worry about it. God will work it out. And so the next night, we go to our family home in the inner city that we keep, and all the family was there. And my dad drives in his big white Mercedes. He's moved up now. He has a 4-door. And he gets out of the car, he small talks all the grandkids, and he walks up to me and says, "Wow, you're getting really fat." I'm like, "Well, that's a really good greeting to see you, Dad." Now, my siblings, we still have this childhood fear of our father, so we hide liquor and alcohol when he comes around. But I don't. So he just kept and I'm trying to introduce him to Doug, and he wouldn't go, and then finally, I'm just ready to tell him off. And he walks up to Doug, and he puts his hand out, and he says, "Welcome to my family." That moment, I was free. That moment, I did not have to hide anymore. The closet is nothing but death and bondage. And any closet you live in, whatever that is, it will keep you unfree. I'm free today. I'm black. I'm gay. I'm a priest. I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. But most of all, I'm free. Thank you.